Okay, here we are with part 2 of my series in trying to understand the first tier issue of what is God like? And that the rest of life begins to make more sense, or we are able to deal with the challenges of life like Covid-19 because we have that foundational understanding in place and hopefully a relationship with God, not just knowledge of God. So let me jump into our first subject I want to bring up then after our intro that we had last time. So let me ask you a question. Do you feel in control right now? You might. Maybe you're at work or at home and things are going the way you intend. Well, good. That's nice. That's a level of where you're in control of certain things in a pretty limited context, though, right? So let's broaden the scope a little bit. Living life as we are now during this coronavirus time, are you in control of how close others come to you? Are you in control of whether or not they cough into their elbow like they're supposed to or not? You're probably not so much in control of those sorts of things, are you? In fact, clearly, we are not in control of most things in our life. Little things, yes. Sometimes we have control in some big areas, but there's a lot of stuff we're not in control of, especially thinking about the times we live in. Well, our governor and our president, they're in control of more things, especially some of those big things, and while some of their decisions may seem good, others may seem unhelpful or even alarming. But generally speaking, when we start looking at things that are outside our control, it often brings comfort to know that someone is in control, right? I mean, think of when you were a little kid. If you had your mom and dad in the house, there was a certain level of comfort that was just built in because they were there and you knew that they were there and taking care of things. But there are things outside of the control of all of us. For instance, are you any good at controlling the weather? I'm not any good at controlling the weather. No, there's things outside of our control for sure. And to get to our current life situation, not me, not you, not our president or any scientist is in control of the coronavirus situation. They're not in control of every aspect of how it's affecting life and will affect life in time to come. It's kind of bleak at times, isn't it? Well, then let me tell you what we find in the Bible. You see, God is in control. We sometimes speak of this as God's sovereignty. I want to share a couple verses with you at this point. From Ephesians 1, verse 11. In him we have obtained an inheritance, having been predestined according to the purpose of him who works all things according to the counsel of his will. And we can turn back to an interesting passage back in the book of Daniel, chapter 4. A king that thought he was the greatest and mightiest thing ever, very proud of himself, God brought him up short. When this king came to his senses, he says, speaking of God, for his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are accounted as nothing, and he does according to his will among the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say to him, what have you done? We could look in the book of Acts chapter 17, where Paul is speaking to some folks, and he says, the God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place. And maybe it's easy to understand God's sovereignty in the sense of nations and things like that. Maybe you have trouble understanding that he could be in control of the smaller things. Well, let me share with you another verse from the book of Matthew. And Jesus is speaking and says, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from the will of your Father. And we could take many more verses from the Bible, and as we flesh out this topic of God's sovereignty, it kind of boils down to this. God is chief in position and supreme in power. And he is in complete control, ultimately, in the ultimate sense, he is in complete control of all things. What does this mean? This means that God is ruler over all. No one can tell God what to do. He cares for all creation and does his will in the affairs of men. He allows you free will, but he desires for you to submit to his plan for your life, which is always right and good. Now, his sovereignty does not make God the author of evil. We live in a fallen world, a broken world, and there are consequences of that. But rather, his sovereignty is so complete that even when bad and evil things happen, he is able to bring good things out of them. So did God cause the coronavirus? No, I don't believe so. But he has allowed it. Are there tragic things happening as a result? Well, of course there are. But God is also bringing many good things out of it. You hear these stories as well as the tragic ones. He is in control, and that means he is not overwhelmed by it. He has set boundaries for it. This is not the only messed up thing that has or ever will happen in our lives. But we can take comfort that God is still in control and is actively involved to bring much good out of a time that is very troubling. I hope you're encouraged by these words today, these thoughts on the sovereignty of God. The fact that he is in control may be a little intimidating for you. It's biblically true. As I flesh out more of what God is like, you'll find this to be more and more comforting. Have a great day.